Unfortunately, Pontiac does not exist anymore, and it felt like they were trying really hard, maybe too hard in the early 2000s to create some interesting designs to kind of bring the vibe back of Pontiac. But they didn't really work out, specifically from a design standpoint. However, there was a really cool production car from Pontiac in the same era, and that is the Pontiac Sunfire, and specifically the GXP, and that's the one we're gonna redesign in this video. It's gonna be a lot of fun to do that. But before we do that, I want to show you the Sunfire evolution here in this beautiful collage that I put together. So starting with the 2000 Sunfire, I kind of like this design. This Sunfire, it went through a lot of stages, and it feels like they just tried to add more things to this design. This was a typical melted cheese design, as you can see. But the thing with Pontiac, I think why I like them so much is that they pushed the envelope of design, maybe not in the best way all the time, but they came up with something new and something unique. For example, the Aztec, which is a very unique looking design. And this is melted cheese 101 right here. We have a very tight, sporty looking front end in this 2000 version. You can see in the rear we have this nice, interesting spoiler just sticking up right where the glass of the rear starts. So it's not really at the end of the trunk, but rather up where the base of the trunk starts, which is pretty interesting. I do kind of like this treatment of the rear end graphics in the 2000 model. Moving down to the 2001 Pontiac Sunfire, and this has some styling features added to it. A very fast and furious body kit. I love this color. There is a lot going on. We have this intake right here in the hood, then we have another intake, double intake in the hood, and then a third double intake in the front end bumper. This is what I'm talking about when they're kind of trying a little bit too hard to stylize their cars. And then on top of that, add some chrome wheels onto this, and this a complete Fast and Furious package right here. I do like this wing or spoiler a lot better than we have in the 2000 version up here. Then moving down to the 2002 HO. I'm not sure what that stands for, but that's what this is. This is Sunfire HO, and I think this looks really clean. It has an interesting front end that looks a lot more calm than the previous generation up here, and it feels like it flows better. Everything flows a little better. We have less melted cheese in this design. We do have a graphic feature right here that kind of breaks that up, and also in the front end, as you can see right here. Going to the rear, I'm not sure what happened here. This looks like a super futuristic car from the early 2000s or late 90s. For example, Judge Dredd. If you were to put a car in there, this is kind of what I'm thinking it will look like. Now moving down to the 2002 American Tuner Sunfire. This has a completely different front end, with the intake sitting far down in the front end of this car, and we also have these nostrils up on the hood as well, and you can see that the headlights look very different. The side of the body looks pretty similar, but the graphics in the front and the rear is what really changed. And this rear end I think looks really cool. I really like how they integrated this ducktail into this design and then created the same line curvature for the taillight. So this is a really cool design by Pontiac. I do like the rear end, maybe not so much the front, but it still looks pretty cool. It kind of brings back the 60s designs of the front end intakes of Pontiacs. Now the 2002 GXP, this is the one we're gonna redesign today, and it's gonna be a lot of fun because I think this actually looks like a really good looking car. There's nothing crazy going on in this styling. What I want to do is just take this design, modernize it, make a different intake in the front end, take some Audi RS3 headlights, modify them to suit this shape, maybe stretch it out a little bit so it doesn't look too narrow-eyed and have more of a presence on the road. But I do like the wheels, I do like the overall graphics of this car, both in the front and in the rear. I think this spoiler looks really cool, and the graphics in the rear as well. It comes together very nicely with this diffuser with the dual exhaust in the bottom. I just wanted to throw in the 2003 coupe here. I think this was the last Sunfire to be produced, and it kind of brings back this spoiler that we have in 2000 where it sits in the base of the trunk. But other than that, I do definitely prefer this generation to this interesting complexion in the front end design that we have in the 2003 model. Alright guys, so let's get into the redesign of the Sunfire. While I'll do this redesign, I want to give you some backstory of the brand Pontiac. So as you know, from its beginning in the 1920s through its death as collateral damage of the 2008 financial crisis, Pontiac spent decades as a significant American automobile brand. It produced a few legendary vehicles, including the Bonneville and the Safari wagon, and left a lasting impression on the muscle car industry with its family of GTOs, Firebirds, and Trans Ams. In 1926, the first Pontiac automobile was produced. It was a 6-cylinder car that was intended to sell for the price of a 4-cylinder, and Pontiac was promoted over the next 2 decades as GM's sporty and reasonably priced division. Pontiac was manufacturing the cheapest inline 8-cylinder car by 1933. It used the Buick's torpedo style, and it was distinguished by the silver streak of chrome molding that ran up from the grille and along the middle of the hood. And this design feature, which reflected the streamlined modern trend, divided the grille in half and would reappear in 1959 and became a distinguishing component of Pontiac's exterior styling. Following management change in the late 1950s, efforts were made to reinvent the brand as a performance line. The change was aided by none other than John DeLorean, the new director of engineering, and the first Bonneville using Pontiac's first fuel-injected engine was unveiled in 1957. During this same period, Pontiac replaced their traditional badge, a Native American headdress, with the V and star arrowhead design in 1959. With the launch of the Grand Prix, a sporty bucket seat coupe in the 1960s, Pontiac intensified its focus on sports car. They introduced the iconic GTO, widely regarded as the first muscle car, in 1964. The acronym GTO, which refers to Ferrari race vehicles, stands for Gran Turismo Omologato, which translates to Grand Touring Homologated in Italian, a variation of the Chevy Camaro, and Pontiac's response to the Mustang, the Firebird, arrived on the market 3 years later. The Trans Am, a higher-performance version of the Firebird, became well known after starring with Burt Reynolds and Sally Field in the classic 1977 movie Smokey and the Bandit. Sadly, following the golden age of muscle cars, interest in Pontiac vehicles began to wane. The brand released a number of fresh contemporary cars throughout the 1980s and beyond, but the majority just felt weak and they just fell short. So General Motors starting to getting rid of old models, making changes to tried and true designs, and then eventually starting over. When GM eventually revealed its intention to eliminate the Pontiac brand by the end of 2010, fans and lovers of the brand were all left disappointed. And since then, many people have continued to wonder why Pontiac was shut down, especially in light of the fact that the company has been in business for 83 years, while also starting to introduce new cars such as the G8 Performance Sedan and the Solstice Roadster. There are 2 main factors that led GM to decide to drop the brand. Number 1, for the last few years of its existence, Pontiac hadn't been profitable, and given that GM was having serious financial issues prior to declaring bankruptcy in 2009, this left Pontiac in a catastrophic situation. Number 2, Pontiac frequently sold rebadged Chevrolet cars for less than Chevrolet, undermining the Chevrolet brand as a whole, in addition to making a loss for itself. So that's not a good equation. A number of GM personnel made a desperate attempt to salvage the brand, but their efforts were ineffective. So on April 27, 2009, GM made a decision to stop producing the Pontiac brand officially. And on October 31st, 2010, the Pontiac's dealer's franchise agreement came to an end. And that's my redesign of the Pontiac Sunfire. Too bad Pontiac went out of business. I really wanted to see what they could come up with today, because they started to do the G8 sedan, which looked like a muscle car sedan in the late 2000s. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.